there's not. Oh yeah, we are live. The little live thing came up in the corner there, so that should mean we are live. Hello, everybody watching. It's always the first couple of seconds is just as awkward every time. But anyway, citizens of Avatar Country, welcome. Thank you for being here and supporting us, and give a huge welcome to our guest at this time. You guys know her maybe mainly from having produced Feathers and Flesh with us. However, she has done so many cooler bands than that, believe me. She is crucial in so many ways in shaping what kind of band Avatar is still to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, Sylvia Massy. Sylvia, hello.
Hi. So good to see you.
So good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. It's I've been kind of isolated here, but I'm enjoying the kind of the peace and quiet,
Mhm.
as well as I can.
You've been able to stay somewhat safe and all those things.
Yeah, I don't go outside very often. But there's so much to do in here that
Good.
I stay busy.
I,
Yeah.
s- I s- I s- I saw a picture of you with a shotgun in the control room of a studio
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah, that
Is
was
was
just
that now,
last
or is that
weekend.
a? Okay.
Yeah, no, I was experimenting with the miking techniques, and so I tried it was a shotgun mic, right?
Yeah.
Shotgun mics are actually mics that have that are really long, and you can pick up things from a distance. But I thought, well, why not use a shotgun for a shotgun mic? And so I put a little cartridge in. It was a microphone cartridge in the shotgun, and uh, and then pointed it at a guitar amp. And I'd always wanted to point a gun at a guitar amp, you know, and I did now. So
No, we so for people watching and listening, start providing some questions in the chat, and yeah, make them very feathers and flesh focused. I would think would make perfect sense on this particular rendition of our live stream. As we got Sylvia here, shotgun mic. That's is that the I feel like it's not the first time that you have started off an experiment in the studio based on a pun. Would that would that be a correct guess?
yes, yes. Yeah, I think there's been quite a few. In fact, Feathers and Flesh, we had a few interesting adventures while we were recording. One was actually in Helsinki, just taking the ferry boat out to the
Mm,
frozen island prison every day
yeah,
to do vocals, which was crazy fun.
yeah,
And
and
then what else did we do? We did a bunch of stuff out there.
we did a bunch,
Light
but the one
bulbs and
thing, yeah, exactly. But the thing I remember, one, okay, there are a couple of things that stands out. One would be how you we would use a garden hose with a mic
yes.
into it to get some lower frequencies from the for the bass
Drums.
drums
Yes, yes. And another thing we did was we went to a cathedral in
in
Gothenburg
Gothenburg. Yeah, I
and we
wasn't there for that one,
recorded.
but yeah.
Oh man, that we recorded the giant pipe organ there in this
Mm.
massive, beautiful historic cathedral, and that was quite an amazing adventure too.
But
Yeah,
now without us, you have done like so. Okay, I remember you posting online at some point. You recording vocals through a potato.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and at least in general, you you are probably yeah. I try to wrap.
It just
I'm
sounds
still
so
at those
weird.
trying to wrap my head around your process because one thing that is clear, just having gotten to know you and also seeing what you do like on social media and stuff, you are a tech geek, a tech freak, and as I remember you posting things you went to, I guess, old radio stations in the former East Germany to find old Eastern Bloc technology for
Yeah.
recording, stuff like that. And then everything that is up to date and up to speed as well. I feel, as far as I could tell, you're very on top of. And then you have the potatoes. Now,
Well, it's
is
all
there,
in the quest to find new sound, right? Or to
yeah,
new process. The same thing goes into, trying out a new plugin, or let's make our own uh filter out
Mm.
of something around the house, like a hose or
Yeah.
a potato. Actually, it wasn't vocals in the potato; it was a guitar,
Oh
and
yeah, I mix it up
and
maybe.
yeah, and the potato was connected within a speaker cable between the amplifier and the speaker of the guitar, so you can actually put items in that speaker line, the cable, like cut the cable in half and insert different things on the two legs of that speaker cable, and then you get different effects. So I found out, well, first we were just sitting around joking at a dinner table at Studio La Fabrique in France, and we were joking about potatoes and I wonder what a potato sounds like. And then we were just like, well, we have potatoes. Let's just try it. And so you did say that I'm a techie. Well, I think that I'm not a techie, and because I'm not a techie, I'm doing things that are
Fair
really
enough.
kind of
Yeah.
like wrong, but
Yeah. Okay.
sometimes they work. So I think it's because I don't have a lot of formal training with electronics that I'm willing to do some things that someone more knowledgeable might not want to try. But I always am very careful when I'm dealing with electricity. You just have to be somewhat careful about that. We never really risked your life at any time during
No, but I heard
Feathers
it
and
was
Flesh.
mentioned. It was mentioned while I wasn't in the room that someone's, I guess, and I would have said yes if the opportunity would have come up, but that I was supposed at some point to record vocals while parachuting.
Oh
It was
yeah,
something that
well,
was,
maybe on the next record when
yeah, exactly. Don't tell my wife, and we
wouldn't
can
that be
totally do
great
that.
though? Wouldn't that be great? Do you know any pilots?
I'm sure we can find someone. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anyone listening out there today, if you're a pilot, or helicopters are great too.
Oh, I know.
Um,
We know that. I just need someone. What we really need is someone who knows things about parachuting. That is the
oh,
part I
I
would
know
like to
about
have the most.
parachuting. I've
Yeah,
jumped out of planes before. That's just not a big deal.
with a parachute.
Yes. Right. Yeah. No, without a parachute. No, it was with a parachute. It was a static line jump, which is not as exciting as like a free fall, which, you can go tandem and you can have uh, a guide, your parachute guide, on your back, and then he pulls the cord,
Yeah,
because when you're
exactly.
falling, like you're so far up there, it's
Mm.
really hard to concentrate on pulling your cord.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Then
yeah.
I guess that is how I would need to do it too.
Would you
Now,
jump out of a plane? Tell me.
yeah,
You
yeah.
would.
I guess
Great.
so. Yeah. I feel like for
Okay.
whatever reason, I think I imagine that I even would have an easier time doing that than bungee jumping psychologically. I think
Ah,
it's because you're up so high, so the
yeah.
whole I'm gonna hit. It's I guess it's harder to grasp that you're actually gonna hit what's down there if you jump.
Well,
And with
the
bungee
ground
jump, you
comes
just
up. It does come up very fast. So depending on the
yeah.
song, like if it's a
But
short
then it
song, we're
might be
good.
well. We can just get a certain specific scream, like
Oh yeah, you'll get a good scream for sure.
now. Before we enter some questions for from the people there. Now, two things. I want to say something that I just that says something about you, I guess, and once it was decided we were going to do this, a very key memory on again the important role that you played for us by producing Feathers and Flesh is that before we had decided on producer for the album, we had started within the band to figure out like, hey, do you know how to do a concept album? No, and neither do I. Great. So let's try to figure that out. And every time we got in touch with grown-ups, people from labels or whatever, talking that we want to do a concept album, and mostly we're leaning towards doing a fable. It's going to be an album. And everyone was looking like I had a turd hanging out of my mouth. Until first meeting with you over Skype, and we was like, no, so we think about a concept album, and you went, yeah, and clapped your hands like crazy, so excited
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah. The Feathers and Flesh is brilliant too. I've just like loved so much how it turned out. And the writing
Mm.
is what makes the difference, because it is a story from beginning to end. And
Yeah,
it's a
thank
profound story too. I mean, it's like it's an interesting tale. And it for me, it conjures up all kind of images of what's happening in the story, and it just seems like it would be a beautiful, um, illustrated tale. Like I would
Mm.
illustrate the book, like it just I love the idea, and I just love working on it. It was a great concept, and also the Avatar is just fucking brilliant band. So
Oh, you.
oh, you guys are
Oh,
so
you.
good. I
Oh,
mean,
we
you've
worked
actually
so hard on
changed
that.
changed my image. I mean, look, I'm part of the army now. I've got my
Oh, yeah,
avatar,
that's
like
true. You have it in uniform and everything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the everything from the lifestyle to the image to the music to the whole thing.
Changed
It's wonderful.
everything. Should we go? I got a question from the fans from X1 Fiction 3X. Hello, Sylvia.
Hi,
I
X.
was wondering, did you find any particular challenges while recording Feathers and Flesh? How did it differ from other albums you have done?
Oh, wow. Um, well, we were recording in a castle in
Mm,
Dresden, and the idea was to capture the band playing live, because what they are so brilliant at is performing and locking together in this performance and the interplay between the different musicians. So the biggest challenge, the first challenge, there were many challenges, but the first challenge was just making everyone play together in a room while keeping everything isolated in case we needed
mm,
to re-record parts. So the initial tracking was like a live show, but everything is recorded to a separate track, and then it's a little bit of a uh, technical thing there, but the idea worked really well, and they were able to communicate with that unspoken language of
mm,
music, between each other. And it's very exciting, a very exciting band. And I have to say, the guitars and the way the two guitar players work together is also something just exceptional. Um, and so the guitars, honestly, were very easy, just because they're so well rehearsed.
mm.
So there was no problems there. But the initial, like, sorting out the concept, how we were going to approach recording the whole song, the whole album, and taking it piece by piece like that, that was also a big challenge, in order to have a continuity within the story, you know.
Yeah, one thing is, the whole thing as a whole became a huge challenge as far as I remember it, because it's just so much music. It's the longest album we made. It clocks in at, I think, just almost exactly 60 minutes of
Wow.
material,
Yeah.
excluding the bonus tracks and all that. And we did it all in, I guess, more or less 5 weeks in total. But where for a little while there, we worked like overlapping. Remember, you flew over here to Helsinki to start the vocals with me while
Yes.
we were still wrapping up guitar work down in
Right.
Germany.
Right.
And
With Peter.
yeah, and I just remember like we were getting so manic. I feel like one challenge that you had was to at some point tell us to go to bed. Like, can we
Yeah,
stop now? Like we
and
were got
that's part
intense.
of a producer's job, is to pace, because you could go, go, go and never sleep, and then drop and not be
Yeah.
able to finish.
Now, we
So
started to learn that more recently, but that's so true.
did you?
Yeah, like a bit more. We were in a cabin writing,
Yeah.
and it was not for this album we did now, but just a little while ago. But where I in the afternoon I start bitching about being so burnt and fried and tired, and I don't want to write anymore today. Don't then cook something, and I'm like, I can do that. I can continue tomorrow instead. It was such a revelation after, I don't know, 15 years in this band, that I can
Yeah.
continue tomorrow. And I just
Yeah.
stopped for the day. And the next day was great.
Yep. Yep. You need to take care of the body and the brain,
Mm. And
while
that's
you're
just
doing
something, I
the
guess,
art.
because being a producer, it's a very, I guess, the definition of that, yeah, the definition of what that job means has kind of changed and moved around a bit over the years, where I guess now it entails more things than it ever did. Like usually,
Right.
like, so how do you describe what you do if you go like what the
Well,
job
I think
description?
I think there's a potential for three different roles that a producer can play. And you're right, it has changed over time, because where I come from is the actual recording part, the
Mm,
engineering part. So I'm always thinking in terms of what I can use as far as equipment, microphones,
mm,
processors, instruments to get the effect that I want. So I'm constantly thinking that way as a producer. So that's the engineer type of producer. And then the next one is actually the musician type of producer, and that's a lot more popular today too. Is the producer actually creates all the music and then calls in a singer
mm,
to or a rapper or whatever to do the parts on top, and then that's the finished product. um and then the third type of job is, you have to be a fan, and so you have to love the music or change the arrangement in the music to make it better, more appealing to a larger audience if that's what you're going for, or just to express the art, to scratch that itch, what you're trying to get with that
mm,
music. So you kind of have to be all three in a way today. I think I think there's more engineers than there ever has been before, because it's not an exclusive club anymore. Everyone has their own like recording setup, and in fact, if
mm,
you get, if you work at it, you can get pretty good at it, and then you can create um your own productions. And So it's not an exclusive thing. I think more producers are recording on their own, and vice
mm.
versa. More engineers at home and musicians are producing.
Yeah,
So they take on all those roles. You're right. I
starting to
mean,
blur the lines more and more.
yeah, and it there is not that big separation between the the producer and the musician. However, the producer still has the job, I think. I mean, generally speaking, of controlling the budget
Mm,
and getting things done on a time schedule. I mean,
mm,
these are
mm.
the valuable things that you get with a professional producer, is that,
It's a bit of a grown up in the room in a way.
it
Like,
is,
and
and it's definitely not creative, but the not creative side of production is extremely important, because,
mm,
to have someone uh in the room, the grown up in the room, to say, that part's done, move on,
mm,
or we have 2 more days to finish all the overdubs, to say, come on, let's get this
mm.
done. Because many musicians with equipment at home that they are using to record never know when they're finished. And sometimes they'll just continue on and never
Exactly,
finish. So I
exactly,
think a part of being a producer is finishing. It's like you're not a producer until you finish something, right?
exactly. Until
Yeah.
you actually have produced some results.
Yes. Yes. Right.
It's in the name. Jack CG asks, so whose idea was the, let's call it, clapping segments in Two Feet and Clock? Was it
Do you
always
remember?
yeah, was it always meant to be recording using unconventional means, or did you guys just do it that way on a whim? Well, I'll let you see what you remember of it first.
I can't remember whose idea it was. I'm sure I was a good part of it, though. It's like, how can we record claps differently? Well, why don't we, slap your ass, It's
Yeah,
like
I think it's something that definitely started as a joke coming from somewhere, either
it did.
saying it like that or someone in the band just pulling pants down and start, going to
Yeah,
town,
but you know
something like
what?
that. But it's very quickly you are there saying, yeah, yeah, okay, go, ready, guys, headphones on, like
Yeah,
no reaction.
and it actually worked, and we used those claps. That was I mean, we tried the traditional clapping,
Yeah,
but the ass clapping was so much better, I thought.
a bit deeper, fuller tone. Yeah, it's a bigger surface attached to something bigger. It's like the difference between I don't know, a trumpet and a trombone. I guess one is a bit bigger bell, bigger
I'm
tone.
sorry. That there's something called a butt trumpet that just came to mind, but
Ah, my apologies. I didn't mean to. But yeah, no, it was a thing. Very, as far as I remember, very much in the moment. We laugh
yeah.
and then we go with it, and then which is even funnier when it proves to be 100% useful as well.
The thing is like, as a producer though, um and the adult part of being a producer is figuring out how much time we have to finish a list of overdubs or whatever we're working
Mm,
on. And do we have time to goof around?
mm.
That's the important thing, is if you want to have that freedom of trying experiments that may or may not work, you have to build that time into your
Mm,
schedule. So you can't just always just kind of do it on a whim. You really, in fact, need to plan for something to happen. Maybe you don't know what it's going to be, but give yourself some time, some elbow room you know, on your project to be able to do some experiments.
yeah. Then I must say, there's something to be said about being out of time and the creative decisions you have to make then. That
Ooh, yeah.
crunch time, which you can't go like that all the time, obviously. But there's something to be said, especially towards the end of a long, when we've been writing, we've been rehearsing, we've been emailing with the, with you, for instance, and we're doing back and forth everything. We're in the studio, we go through all that. Towards the end, you're kind of fried. You're out of time. You have not solved everything, but you're also a very well-oiled machine. Like everything across the past year has been wired into thinking about these songs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? How quickly, like how you bleed out the first couple of riffs, maybe, but towards the end, oh, we need to change the riff. Well, we can do this or this or this or this or this. I don't know. Just put it on there. Like it's almost like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's how
Something
it
there's something
happens.
to be said about having no time.
And I kind of love handing over a list of things to do to an engineer, and then
Mm,
leaving that session and saying, okay, you guys, you do that. We're going to go over here and we're going to do something else in Helsinki. We're doing
mm,
vocals, and good luck, you guys. You got to get it done. And because when there's two things happening, and maybe as a producer, I'll check in
mm,
on the other uh, production happening in the other studio. But I love doubling up, and it's only really necessary when you're running out of time.
yeah,
Okay, now we have to split it up in order to get it done, and having a team that's ready to help is awesome. And sometimes in our case, it worked out very well,
yeah,
and we were able to get everything done and more, and still have time to have some adventures. Uh, Plus just the ways that we approached the entire project, I thought was worked out so well. I mean, that when I think of Avatar, I think of like there's an image in my mind of of uh, the characters, the suspending disbelief, and
mm,
who Avatar is. So when we went to the castle in Dresden, it seemed like, well, this record has to be recorded in a castle, right? Just
yeah,
being there in this environment was going to enhance the performances, and to really imprint something special into those tracks. And then I thought it was also perfect to be going to the island, Suomalina in Helsinki Harbor to do vocals in
mm.
that little um, prison, which it was a converted uh, prison, 150 years old or something like that.
Yeah, I guess 100. I think they did use it during their civil war here. About like yeah, just little over 100 years
Okay,
ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's but just taking ourselves out of the city and
Mm.
going out in through the icebergs to this island every morning.
It was a good
uh
winter.
oh my god, what an adventure that was. And
Mm.
then the vocals were fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So and I have to think that part of it again was the environment. I
Yeah.
mean, you can work in a closet with the egg crates, but it's way better when you do your recordings in an environment that enhances
Mm.
the um, the intention of the music. I think we did good.
Absolutely. We did. There's a question kind of on, we've been touching kind of on this a little bit, but Pendanoche, I guess I would pronounce that. The hardest thing for me would maybe be deciding that something is done. How do you decide
Yeah.
that the work is finished and the album is done?
Boy, it's a hard thing. You just continually are making. What I do is I continually make lists. So
Mm.
I check the work periodically just by myself. Okay, let's listen. I'm listening and I listen very carefully, like, is this too busy? If it is, I'm going to try taking something away. Is this too empty? Okay, let's write down a few ideas of what we might try, or just write down that this part is empty and make sure that we know what part that is. And then we'll sit and discuss what kind of ideas we might use to finish this particular song. So each song gets a list like this, and then you just check things off, just kind of just methodically
Mm.
work through the lists. And then at the time when everything is done on your list, then you have to do another full listen and really separate yourself from the project and pretend you're hearing it for the first time. And if it satisfies, or if the musical intention, the story comes through, uh and is not clouded by trying too hard, or not fully expressing something, well, then you're done. I mean, there will be a time
Mm.
when I listen to a song and I go, wow, there's nothing more to say.
Mm.
It's okay, time to move on. What's next? And then but yes, in fact, you will always have more ideas. And that's something that my partner Chris and I always say, is that the project doesn't end when the ideas run out, because they will never run out. Because
That's very true.
you can just put this aside and say, okay, that's enough, and now we do something else.
Yeah.
And because those ideas will continually come, and so apply those ideas to something new. Why not make more music instead of continually working something that was finished long ago.
That's so true. I guess that is the closest thing. You gave way better answers to this than I could. But one feeling, I guess, something I start to wrap my head around is whenever it's finished or not, that art is created in a certain here and now. And
Yeah.
the here and now can be a span of, we have whatever you do that day or that
Ah,
year, that phase in your
right.
life, whatever. But at some point, you will run out of whatever measurement of now you have for something. Where
Right.
yeah, because if you listen to the old in our case our first couple of albums when we were in our early 20s, or and late teens for that matters, music recorded then, that could, I'm sure we could have kept working on those songs and getting certain things better, if we kept working with them until now, but they wouldn't have been that anymore. They wouldn't have
Yeah,
been,
right.
there's a certain,
It's a
I
snapshot in time.
yeah, there's a certain, exactly. And if you are adolescent, hormone filled teenage boy writing metal, the scope of like love, what's
Yeah,
on your
right.
mind, yeah, I think you can only own in on that in that particular period where that actually is on your mind, and then
Do
you
you
enter a
think
new
that
phase, write new songs and do new music
yeah,
about
do you think that the older that you get, the potential for hanging on to continuing to work on a project is more of a risk, because the attention deficit. of a teenager or a younger person, is such an issue that they will be bouncing on to something else much sooner than an older person. I don't know,
Well,
as you grow into your role.
speaking for myself, I think it's different because, uh, in my case at least, and I think I speak for the whole band, not really, because the nature of being in a band where people suddenly expect an album to be released on time helps you to understand that you
Ah,
need a certain momentum of movement. And
right,
those songs, again, like we got to certain songs that were on our first album was written and worked on for 4 years on
right,
demos in the rehearsed room and our little youth center shows and battle of the bands. So they had a prolonged period, which I think is normal for really young bands.
right.
You first album you record all the songs you ever wrote since you were 12, kind of,
Yes,
you
right,
know
yeah,
and then you get into the next mode of things. For me, I again, like, I have started to get much better at feeling that, oh no, this album is now, and we're
yeah.
running out of now, and soon it's gonna be, soon is coming and gonna be the new now, and suddenly this is completely irrelevant to me. So you again, and at some point you just have to try to nail the things as well as possible during that period of time. And
Wow, how profound. Soon is coming and soon it will be now.
yeah, something like
Wow.
that. Ah. From Octomegon asks you, Sylvia, do you ever purposely limit the gear you work with, like recording a whole album with SM57s or using an 8-track tape machine? And favorite monitors? Also curious.
Oh, so important. All right. The monitors first. Are my favorite monitors are Finnish, actually, from the
Hmm.
Genelec company. Um, and yeah, I've used the 8351 A's and B's, and we're setting up a Genelec immersive system in the new studio, which is uh, 9 speakers below, 4 speakers above, and 2 subs. It's giant, and it's just this massive thing. Anyway, I trust the Genelecs. I've used them for years and years, since the early 90s. So I'm a Genelec girl. And I went up to the factory in Finland, actually, not too long ago. Um, and what was the other question?
Was with recording, did you ever purposely limit the gear you work with?
Limiting the gear. Well, sometimes when I'm doing a remote recording,
Mm,
I will be limited to 8 microphones. And then I will generally use something that I can absolutely trust, because if I'm out in the field, I don't want to have to muck around with something that is, temperamental. So I'll use 57s and 58s. I might use a 421, usually not any condensers that require phantom power. I use a remote recording system, and I've used several different systems, but the one I'm using today is called Sound Devices, and it's a little portable. I don't have it next to me here, but it's a portable standalone multi-track recorder that has 8 mic pre's in it. So with XLR input, so I can carry it underneath my coat
mm.
and hide it, bring it into anywhere, and set up quickly and record anything anywhere. So yes, I enjoy the challenge of using less to record. However, recently my partner Chris and I purchased a microphone museum. So now I have
I
way more
saw
mics
something
than
like
I
that.
ever
Yeah.
had before. So just the opposite is happening. Actually, about a month ago, I went to LA and recorded a project for Taylor Hawkins, who's the
Mm.
drummer for the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, yeah.
And I brought 64 vintage microphones with me, just from there's over 2,000 microphones in this museum, but I just only brought 64, plus all the regular mics that I was using from the studio. We worked at a beautiful studio in Los Angeles called East West, and so
Mm.
they already have, fantastic vintage mics and current mics. but I had to bring mine too. And so there were more mics than I'd ever used on any project. And we filled up every mic pre in the 80 input Neve 8078 console, and every input into the recorder, which was a 64 input IO by Antelope. So it's like, of course I could just record with a few mics, but you know, the,
Oh,
both
but you
ways are
can,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would have gone crazy. I would have. I'll be back in 2 days. I would have said, and I'll trust you guys and leave. That's no problem.
Yeah, there was a lot there. There was a lot going on. It was great.
Lara 428 wonders, Sylvia, has the way you approached production changed in the past 10 or 15 years, given the shift in how people typically consume music?
Well, it is more available than ever. So music comes from every direction these days. Much of it is recorded at home, and then I will either take a project, uh, having already kind of had the initial tracks recorded and continue with it, or finish it as a producer. I'll come in, and a lot of times artists will come to me and say, "Help me finish," because
Mm,
I know how to say, "Yes, done, move on." So I've been able to help people collect together all their tracks and organize, and then make a good list of what needs to be finished and act as producer, but jump into a project already underway. So that's a new role that's changed over the last. Oh, we have the doorbell. Sorry about that. Anyway,
no worries.
I think Chris is going to get it, but the other thing is that so much work is being done at home that I'm doing a lot more mixing than I ever have before. And
Hmm.
that's where building this new room with the special monitoring, and just a this monster recording rig in there that I'm using for mixing is so important for me now. Plus, as it turns out, the COVID experience
Mm,
has kept me at home more than ever. So the work that I'm doing is remote production,
mm,
where I'm actually logging in to a session in, say, Calgary, Canada,
mm,
and helping them track by track work on their parts, and then taking the final tracks, having the files sent to me via a web transfer, a cloud transfer, and then I download, and then I'll mix it, and then I upload the files to the client, and then we go back and forth with finishing those mixes. So that, I mean, I've been doing that for years, but over the last um, 10 years, that's increased quite a bit. And then this past year, it's like gone, it's I'm so jammed up with mixes now. It's a great thing because I love it. And the music that I'm getting is really good too.
that's good.
So yeah, I mean, music is not hurting in any way. I think the the industry for touring is cratered. I mean, it's just a disaster. But
Obviously, yeah.
recording and creativity is at a peak. People are at home. They have machines that allow them to be creative, and they have time to be
Mm,
creative more than ever. So so I know that manufacturers, the equipment manufacturers like Manly Labs, is a company that makes EQ and mic pre's and rack gear, analog rack gear. They say that their sales are up more than 50% from last year. So it's just a big boom time for these equipment manufacturers. So there's a lot more recording at home, and that means I get more mixes. When COVID came in March, I was just coming back from India,
mhm,
uh, and and I had 8 months of work um, scheduled, which was a trip to Australia, a trip to Abbey Road, uh, to work with Ken Scott. I was going to go to Princeton to work on a new mic design. Um, and Europe, there was a bunch of things that I had scheduled for Europe, and everything got canceled.
Mm,
So, so yeah, you had, for a moment, I didn't know what I was going to do. Um, so I just painted. I spent a month just painting, and I painted huge canvases. Usually I paint maybe little ones,
mm.
but this time I did giant canvases, and I had nothing else going on. Nothing was clouding my brain. Uh, so it was a very interesting opportunity that no one saw coming, I guess.
That's yeah. It's a weird that is some like in a period that has mainly been problematic and tragic and dark. The
Yeah.
strange truth of it is, depending on who you are and where you are at in life and your setup, like just for you can call it pure luck, but but circumstances, different
Yeah.
circumstances. Some of us have had suddenly opportunities for things that where it's almost like on a personal level, there's a very positive side to what happened.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
slowing down, the handbrakes, the
Yeah.
stuff, which is there's. I still think we all would agree we would rather not have a pandemic rage the globe and the suffering
Yeah.
abroad,
Yeah.
you
People
know.
dying. Yeah.
But it's
So,
just so weird to come but therefore at the same time, like, hey, I started meditating, hey, I'm in better
yeah.
shape than I've been,
Right. Better
hey,
shape.
yeah,
Right. I mean,
hey, I didn't think I was going to write this much music this year as I
ah,
did this. I never write this much right after finishing the production of an album, like
wow.
being on tour usually means that side of the
Yeah.
brain goes on vacation, but we didn't get to
Sure.
use the touring brain, so it's
Yeah, sometimes you don't know why things are happening, and it does seem very dark, but it will take time for us to be able to look back and understand why this is so important for us, and for many people, this is the opportunity for them to get their selves together, to really do creative things, or to learn something that they never had time to learn before. Yeah, it's a special time. I mean, it's a dark time, but it is also extremely creative time.
That's very true. Hey, so X1 fiction N3X again. We should just call her fiction, is faster.
Fiction.
She has a question for each one of us, and for you, the question is: was there a particular album or band that made you want to be a producer?
Oh, uh-huh. Yes. I think probably the album was an album by the band Yes, and the album was Fragile.
Oh, there you
And
go. Yeah.
right, it's a very prog
Mm,
album, but it's bone dry. The sound of it is dry, really in your face. The bass is super loud, and the bass is like almost a voice, an instrument, important. The bass was much more important on that album than I'd never ever heard before. And the vocals, I suddenly, upon listening to that, understood that even though there was a whole choir of voices, it was only one person singing all
mm,
those
mm.
voices, singing each one of those parts. And it was when things clicked in my head, of oh my God, that this is what people do in recording studios, is there's layers, layers, and layers. And then I started thinking about how I could do it myself, and I started experimenting with a little cassette recorder at that time, or two cassette recorders, and bouncing from one to another, and I started
Mm.
doing those types of things. But that was an extremely important album. And then the other one was a band. Well, it wasn't even a band. It was a these two producers, Sly and Robbie, who do or who did, they were big in reggae dub,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like the kings of reggae dub. And this again was something that I would listen to with my friends. We'd get stoned, we'd
Mm.
listen to reggae, and then I understood like all the trippy sounds and stuff when I understood that was the people in the studio, not the musicians. um, that the engineers in the studio were playing, the studio like an instrument. that became very fascinating. And my first experience in a professional recording studio was as a singer in my own band in college. And the engineer was so kind to give me some faders on the console, which I'd never sat before, in front of before. And he said, okay, this one, right, this knob right here, this one is where you add reverb. And
Mm,
this one is where you add delay. And then I understood what the difference was.
mm.
And then he recorded me playing around making my own dub mix with
That's cool.
yeah. And holy cow, that changed my life. It's so that those are very uh distinct memories of music that I was listening to that really affected and made me want to do this. And then I just fell into it. I honestly, I didn't go to school for it. I just hung out with musicians and in studios. And I actually learned how to edit and do recording at the radio stations because I also was a fan of radio. And so here's my, my announcer mic,
Yeah.
and
There's
so
a
I had
strange
my own
culture
tradition.
of, there's a certain culture of apprenticeship in music still, I feel, how it is. Like it's not super conventional how people get into production, or no,
Yes.
it's rare to go to school for exactly that and then to work with exactly that. It happens, and more now than before, I guess, but it's still rare. Now the question for me was, what made me and Avatar want to work with you? And the moment when it clicked again, like, because again, your name came up through our management, who heard it through a friend, Roxy, I guess it was, who mentioned you to them. And but the big turnaround moment, I feel, was that Skype meeting. Again, your excitement of the idea of us doing a concept album, and then that you saw very quickly you start to talk more about your paintings than about music. You saw, I also do paintings, and here's one, and you
uh,
start to show these paintings you were working on, holding it up
uh,
in the frame. I was like, yep, this is different from what we have done before. We
uh,
love this. We're gonna do this. But
awesome.
the next question for you, it's not a. This is from Cookies. So Cookies Zoe. And this isn't a feathers and flesh related question, but I was looking at your past work. How was working with Prince?
Oh boy. Well, I could go on for hours about Prince because I did work with him for about 3 years, various projects, and then at the end of that whole stint, I was offered a job to go to Paisley Park. They were going to move me to Paisley Park, but I turned them down because I just got connected with the Tool guys, and we
Mm.
were planning our album, the first recordings. And so I turned down Prince. Never heard from him again. But my time with with Prince was really exciting. I was working in a studio called Larrabee, and the my boss, I was a kind of an on staff engineer at Larrabee, and my boss said, he pulled me aside. He said, "Look, you're on the session with Prince. I'm assigning you to be on this session. He's only booked for 4 days, and he's never worked here before. So make sure he likes it here, and he'll come back." So, so I worked really hard on making him comfortable. He walked in. He says, "Hey, don't you have a big stuffed chair?" And I knew that there was no stuffed chair in the whole studio, but I said, "Of course, I'll just go get it now." And then I ran out and drove a truck to a antique store and threw a chair, the first thing I could find, in the back, and brought it back. And I said it, it's like a big stuffed chair. And he sat in it, and he's like, "Yeah, okay." And then he stayed. He stayed not for four days, but he stayed for 3 years. So so it
Job well
worked.
done.
It worked. But yeah, the he was very, very difficult to work with because he's very demanding, and he didn't speak very much. So you would have to kind of guess what he was thinking because he wasn't always going to tell you. And so so it was very difficult to work with him in some ways, but some of the most memorable moments I have about I think of when I think of working with Prince was I'm in the studio with him. I'm recording, and he's picking up a guitar. I put out all kinds of instruments for him in case he wanted to grab something. I was ready. I was going to record it. Everything was in tune. Everything was ready. So he would grab a guitar. I'd have it and record, and he would just play a couple licks, and he would be playing and spinning on his heels, like dancing, and holy cow. And it was just me and him in the studio. So I was like, in fact, getting my own Prince show, and it was just unbelievable. But not a lot of sleep for 3 years. Because Prince doesn't sleep, so he would be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he'd call me and he'd say, "Come to the studio." It's like, oh fuck. So yeah, it was a very exciting time, and I have many many stories, some sorted stories, because um, he was a rascal. Yeah. But it's a shame to think that he left the earth so soon, because
Yeah.
but he's left behind an immense treasure of music in the archives that no one's heard yet, and hopefully it'll come out over time, because while I was working with him, he was also booking in another 4 studios. So let's say five studios. He was working in 5 studios at the same time. So I would be in
It's
one room,
insane.
and he would do a couple of licks, and then he'd say, "Okay, put that in the song," and then he would disappear into the next room while I was working. And the next room had an engineer similar, who was working on something, and Prince would play a few parts and go to the next room, and then in the next room they were mixing something, and he would listen to the mix, and then he would give direction and bounce to the next room, right? So it was bounce, 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 bounce all the time. And this was a big learning experience for me, because I'd never seen anyone do multiple sessions at the same time. Uh, uh, Prince was the first one that I saw do that. And then,
Did he do that for all the 3 years? Like, is that the method he used?
yes, not
Because it
only for
sounds
three
like a lot
years,
of fun. It sounds like a
not
lot of
only
fun
for
for a
three
while, but
years, but can you imagine? And in each of those rooms, he finished 2 songs a day. So, I mean, from beginning to end, from inception, lyrics, tracking, vocals, mix, 2 songs a day in each room. So 10 songs a day he was writing and finishing. 10 songs a day.
I gotta
So
go. I got work to do.
so he's yeah, so what they have down there in the basement at Paisley Park is unbelievable. Because the labels, there was too much material, they couldn't put it all out, so there's so much waiting for us to hear.
Oh, I
And
love it.
oh god, it's so good question. Anyway, thanks for asking about Prince.
Well, Miss Hagen is the next question, and she asks, Sylvia, what were your thoughts on the story of Feathers and Flesh when they came to you with it?
I think it is so weird. Uh, yes, Johannes, your
It
stories
is
are
a bit
weird
weird. Yeah,
and
it is weird.
wonderful, but so incredibly visual, like thematic and
Mm.
visual. So I immersed myself right into that story of the owl, and I put up canvases and I started
Yeah.
painting the owl, and yeah, I love the story. That's the thing that really attracted me to the project. Just it's a great band anyway, but to have the bonus of having excellent writing and an actual concept was just way over the top. And so, yeah, I'm a huge fan. Still am.
Well, it was definitely a learning experience to write something that was supposed to be coherent like that, but it's, as it was I feel I was somewhat liberated by the whole nature of it being a fable and a bit mythological, that I
Yeah,
didn't have to explain every step of the way, that it's okay that an
sure.
owl can fly up out in space to hide eggs. That sounds like the different myths, creation myths of different
Sure.
pagan
Yeah, like Greek
religions.
myths. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. And in ancient Norse, our world came because a giant cow was licking the ice, and in the ice was a giant that was slain by Odin, and they built the world from it. There's a certain when it's mythological, you can have certain freedoms like that in the symbolism.
Well,
Uh,
Johannes, I think that your music is so incredibly visual like that, that it's not just music. It's the stories. I hope that you get animated storybooks for yourself in a series,
and one
because
day,
I think
maybe.
your writing is that good, and
Oh, thank
so it doesn't even need to be just only music. You know, I think your work goes beyond that.
thank you so much. We are. Oh, we got. Well, we got a few minutes more. If you have a few minutes more,
I have a
Sylvia.
few minutes, sure.
So, have you produced many concept albums? Do you find them more challenging?
Let me think how many concept albums I've done. I've done a few. I did an album with a band called Powerman 5000.
Mm-hmm.
That was an outer space epic. And it started like a Star Wars saga. And it went through the story of a fellow uh, X51 and his adventures. Um, Not as distinct as Feathers and Flesh, but also very fun. And I love it because of my radio background. It
Mm,
I can treat them much like a radio show,
mm,
in that I'm going to have sound effects and I'm going to have theme music for like the chase scene or something like that. Um, and I'm not shy about using sound effects or creating sound effects or trying to um create a Foley sound that represents something else. Or imagine uh the difference between recording a voice of an ogre, if there's an ogre in the tale, and a sweet lullaby, you take different approaches to that. An ogre,
mm,
I'm going to use a dirty old uh trucker's mic, and okay, sing in this, you ogre,
mm.
and then the beautiful angel will be singing in a beautiful uh $15,000 tube mic that's just silky and just beautiful, right, for that
Yeah.
beauty. So you can the cool thing about um this type of recording is that and the fact that I am an engineer to start, is that I know, like, this, I'm going to get this effect from this particular piece of gear, and that represents this character. So it's fun to match those things.
Great. Well, Pinda Noche. By the way, that was Nessie Snail who asked that one. Pinda Noche again asks, you seem like a great team. Have you ever worked with a band that didn't work as well together? And feel free to answer that as candidly or non-candidly as you want, of course. It's always a level of
I think
non-disclosure.
I can only really think of one disastrous session.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a piano player from Boston. Oh my God. When he sent the demos, I won't name him,
No, of
but
course.
when he sent the demos, I was uh really interested because of the wretched pain in this guy's performance. He's playing the piano and he's like, oh, he's like, just like in such pain. And I thought, God, what a great shtick this is. He's really convincing. So we set up the session, and he flew out to my studio, and we were recording in a big theater. And I rented a special piano for him. Immediately, he hated everything. He hated the piano. He hated the room. He hated the headphones. And then I just play, please. I got the mics up, just play. And then he was indeed that. He was that person. He was this tortured, just terrible person who just screeched. And
Art
here I
simply
thought,
imitating life.
it was, and so he was so incredibly unhappy that I had to refund him his money back and just send
So
him on his
incredibly
way. It's
unhappy.
just like,
I
but
thought
yeah,
first that was an artistic description of him. He was so incredibly unhappy. It's
yes,
beautiful.
right. Incredibly unhappy. Yeah. But yeah, watch out. Sometimes you think that it's all an act, and it's not.
There's a question that popped up here that I feel it's definitely more for me than for you, but I feel I should take the opportunity to answer it because it's from someone I was pronounced as Helg08.
Helg.
Johannes, I really want to learn how to do God roll, I guess like rouse and stuff, but I'm a 15-year-old girl. What would you recommend me? Is it true that my voice will hurt? Well, uh, I think the evidence for that girls can do this in all kinds of ages is just one Google away. There are so many women doing all kinds of extreme vocals nowadays. Check out Ginger if you don't know them already. And you can also hear her, the singer in that band, sing amazing in multiple styles. And she does some rapping and she's super melodic and can be jazzy and bluesy and all you want and scream my face off. And and done right, you can do all of it at once. So if your voice will hurt, maybe while you are learning how to do it, but within time, once you learn the right techniques, no. And I there's again, this question can be stretched out for 2 hours, but all in all, is I would say that 80-90% of all singing is the same, whether it's opera or anything, or death metal or anything in between. Like what you do with your gut, how you stand, how you breathe, how you perceive things. Like it's all connected. So joining that choir, learning to sing overall, is the way into it, and then you work yourself towards different styles and techniques and effects, such as growling. That's those are my 2 cents. So
I have
that's what I
something to
feel.
add to that too.
Please do.
If you're familiar with recording or processing your vocal using a harmonizer on your regular voice and lowering
Mhm.
the harmonizer one octave below your
That's
regular
some crazy
voice,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, you can get the growl without having to hurt your throat. This is another idea. And also, if you use a low fidelity microphone, oftentimes just by cupping it around your mouth, like you can hear
Yeah.
what happens when you cup it,
Yeah.
it will change. Like if I take this mic and I cup it like this, okay, suddenly my voice sounds different, right?
Yeah.
So you
Exactly.
can do different techniques too with what you do with your mic. Just having like here's a mic right here at 57, just like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
also, what I learned from Maynard from Tool is that if you're standing up when you're doing it, you may not have as much power. But if you lean
I
into it
find
and
myself leaning a lot, and I think yeah, man, yeah.
compress your gut, you have much more control.
So yeah, there are a lot of different paths up the mountain. It's
Yeah.
it's time for the last question
Ah,
from Eustathia Mitsimari. I would
Mitsimari.
pronounce that. uh, if you had the chance, would you like to do another concept album with Avatar, like Feathers
Oh,
and
fuck
Flesh?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I could also I
When
could
it's
also
when
go
it's the
for
right
something
one.
that exactly. I could also
Yeah.
go for something that isn't a concept album. Who knows? I
Yeah.
don't think that's the only premise under which I would love to work with you again, so to speak.
And
And
honestly, I would love to illustrate one of your stories, and that would be my goal. But it just seems like time is so limited. But
but who knows?
someday
Yeah.
I would
Next
love
time,
to
next time a story is
illustrate.
written for one of our albums like that, if they are,
Yeah.
we'll probably reach out to you quite early in that.
Ah,
I want to plug your book, Recording Unhinged. People listening and watching this should
oh
totally check
yeah.
that out.
Do I have a copy?
Uh,
Let me grab one. I think I have one over here.
all right, and I can talk about it anytime. As you can tell by listening to this and hearing Sylvia's stories and approaches to things, she's quite unhinged in herself, and she did this very funny book, exciting book that she also illustrated, a Recording Unhinged,
Here it is.
telling all these stories about
Recording
these
unhinged.
quite eccentric stuff she's done in the studio. And that cover and illustration inside is all
Yeah,
Sylvia as well.
I drew that.
And
That's
if I
cool.
remember, you finished it here in Helsinki. If I
That's right.
remember, you came when we met one morning on our way to
That's
the
right.
ferries. Like, I'm done with the book now.
that was a big challenge to get that done. And we're working
No,
on
they
another
want to see
book
the
about
book. They want to see the book
microphones.
again. They want to hold up the
Oh,
book
here
again.
it is. Yeah. Yeah, they
Recording
recording
Unhinged
unhinged.
by
Yeah.
Sylvia Massy.
Look at there's my self-portrait right there. I'm the cat.
Yeah.
um, but uh but yeah, we're working on another book now about vintage microphones, and so hopefully next year we'll have a second book. One thing that we did to try to help finance the purchase of this microphone collection, because we actually bought it, and we have to pay back the the museum owners for this collection. So we're taking parts of the collection and we're selling it. And so I have let me see if I can get my thing up here. Do you
Oh,
see it?
nice.
So that's where you can
Audioshop.com.
buy uh, vintage microphones. You can buy the book on this site. There's a bunch of radio stuff, old radio stuff, antiques, parts, tubes, instruments, art, memorabilia, some incredible memorabilia. So all kinds of stuff there on that website, audioshop.com. Anyway, there you go. That was my plug.
Very good. Good. I'm usually terrible at plugging. I'm glad I remember to do it with at least once I'm sitting in the host chair to tell the guests to plug things. Well, Sylvia, the thing, what I really love about you and working with you is that not only is there a sense that everything is possible with you, and it's just a question of being willing to put the work in, is that with you there is a feeling that whatever crazy impossible thing that can be done probably should be done
Yes.
when you, when working with you. And
Yes.
that is a very inspiring mindset to have, and to be a very good place to be in when recording and working on songs. And I feel like, again, we grew 10 feet taller just in confidence in our
Oh,
own ability, thanks to you
thank
and
you.
working with you. And that
Thank you.
meant so much.
All right. Well,
And
get ready to jump out of a plane and let's do it.
absolutely, yeah. I'm all for
All
it.
right.
And yeah, and stay safe and wash your hands and stay away
Yeah.
from people more than usual for a little while longer. And I really hope that once we get to hit the road, that that our paths will cross again for
I'm
all
sure they will.
different kinds of reasons. You're an
Great.
absolute gem of a human being. Thank you for
Thank
being
you,
with us.
darling.
And thank you, citizens of Avatar Country,
Yes.
for being with us and asking all
All
these
right.
questions.
All right.
And yeah, stay safe, everybody. Remember to also go to avatarages.com and get your tickets for our shows if you haven't already, because it's going to be such a cool thing we're doing. I don't know if you know this, Sylvia, we're going to do live streams throughout January. And
Fantastic.
the fans get to vote on the different, we do 4 shows. One is the new album, all of it, and then like our top streams,
Yeah.
greatest hits kind of thing. Includes Eagle Has Landed, for instance. And
Fantastic.
but then we have the other sets of albums we have divided into the different eras of the band, so to speak. And from there, people can vote on set lists for those specific eras, and we will dress up in according to those eras of the bands, and also adjust the stage show, which is also a stage we could never do on a normal conventional stage. Instead,
Yeah.
we have this 360 thing going on with multiple
Oh
stages.
my
So
God.
all these crazy things that, again, trying to turn a negative into a positive, because you cannot replace an audience. You cannot simulate that live experience, that
Yeah.
smell of sweat, that
Yeah.
roar, and all those things that goes into a real concert. But you can do something completely different, and we are doing that. And now I plugged that as well. So a bit of
Brilliant.
plugging. And with that, I guess, again, thank you everyone who stays with us and keeps supporting us. And thank you, Sylvia, and
All right.
people, get that book and everything. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right.
See you
Bye.
soon.